Imagine going 2 days without food. You've spent hours tracking a herd across the landscape, memorizing every footprint, every broken branch, and every bend in the valley. Tomorrow was supposed to be the day your family finally eats. Then the sky changes. Dark clouds gather overhead, and within moments the rain begins to fall. Not a passing shower, but a relentless storm that soaks everything in its path. The ground turns to mud, rivers overflow, and the tracks you've been following disappear beneath flowing water. One day passes, then another. The rain refuses to stop. For most of us, that sounds like the perfect excuse to stay indoors with a warm drink and a movie. But for prehistoric humans, endless rain wasn't relaxing. It was a survival test. Long before cities, agriculture, or modern technology, every meal had to be earned. There were no supermarkets to visit, no waterproof clothing to wear, and no heated homes waiting at the end of the day. Survival depended on hunting, gathering, and understanding the rhythms of nature. When heavy rain arrived, those rhythms changed overnight. Hunting became far more difficult. Fresh tracks vanished beneath water, scents washed away, and animals often moved to places that were harder to reach. Traveling across slippery hillsides or flooded valleys became dangerous, and even a minor injury could become life-threatening. A twisted ankle meant you couldn't keep up with your group. A broken leg often meant you wouldn't survive. Then there was the cold. A wet body loses heat much faster than a dry one. Without modern clothing or insulated shelters, spending hours in cold rain could quickly drain a person's strength. Nighttime made things even worse. As temperatures dropped and exhaustion began to set in, finding shelter became the group's first priority. Natural caves, rocky overhangs, and dense forests offered protection from the weather. But humans weren't the only ones searching for dry ground. Wolves, bears, lions, and other predators were driven by the same storm, sometimes forcing both hunter and hunted into the same limited spaces. Surviving the storm meant making careful decisions. Once a safe shelter was found, one responsibility became more important than any other: protecting the fire. Today, starting a fire takes only seconds. We strike a match, flick a lighter, or press a button. For our ancestors, losing a fire could be disastrous. Although humans had learned to control fire hundreds of thousands of years ago, creating a new one from scratch wasn't always easy. During long storms, dry wood became scarce, and if the last glowing ember died, the group might spend days trying to replace it. That is why someone almost always stayed close to the flames. Small branches hidden beneath thick tree canopies were collected whenever possible because they often remained dry even after heavy rain. Larger logs were split open to expose dry wood inside. While the fire itself was carefully shielded from wind and dripping water, every piece of fuel mattered. Too little, and the fire would fade. Too much, and the flames could be smothered. The fire was far more than a source of warmth. It allowed food to be cooked safely, provided light after sunset, dried soaked clothing, and helped keep dangerous animals at a distance. More importantly, it brought the entire group together during their most difficult moments. As rain continued to fall outside, life inside the shelter began to change. The hunt had stopped. The journey had paused, but human progress had not. Those long days trapped indoors became an unexpected opportunity, one that would help shape the future of our species in ways no one could have imagined. As the rain continued to pound the landscape, the cave became more than a place to wait. It became a workshop. With hunting temporarily impossible, every spare hour was used to prepare for the future. Stone was carefully shaped into sharper spear points, stronger knives, and durable scrapers. Each strike had to be precise. Good stone wasn't easy to find, and one mistake could ruin hours of careful work. But stone wasn't the only material people transformed. Bones from previous hunts were carved into awls, fish hooks, and fine sewing needles. Those simple tools allowed animal hides to be stitched into warm, well-fitting clothing that protected families from cold nights and harsh winters. Every repaired garment increased the group's chances of survival. Then there was an invention so ordinary that it's easy to overlook today: rope. Twisting plant fibers into strong cordage required patience rather than strength. Yet that simple process changed nearly everything. Rope made it possible to secure spearheads to wooden shafts, fasten stone axes to handles, strengthen shelters, carry supplies, and build traps that could catch animals even while people rested. Much of early human technology depended on one humble invention: string. People also improved the places where they lived. Archaeological discoveries show that prehistoric camps were often surprisingly organized. Sleeping areas were lined with grasses and reeds to create soft bedding, while worn materials were regularly replaced to keep shelters cleaner and more comfortable. These caves weren't just hiding places, they were becoming homes. Even during difficult times, humans found room for creativity. Natural minerals such as red ochre were ground into fine powders and mixed into pigments. These colors may have been used to decorate the body, preserve animal hides, or mark objects with symbolic meaning. Whatever their purpose, they remind us that survival wasn't humanity's only concern. People also cared about identity, beauty, and expression. But perhaps the greatest achievements born during those rainy days weren't physical objects at all. They were ideas. As families gathered around the fire, conversations grew longer. Experienced hunters explained how to follow animal tracks, recognize changing seasons, and avoid dangerous predators. Gatherers taught younger members which plants healed wounds, which roots were safe to eat, and where fresh water could be found during dry months. There were no schools, no books, no written language. Knowledge survived because people shared it. Every evening became a classroom. Experience passed from one generation to the next. But people didn't spend every moment discussing survival. They told stories. Stories about powerful animals, mysterious forests, distant mountains, and the unseen forces they believed shaped the world around them. These tales entertained children, strengthened family bonds, and preserved lessons that could be remembered long after the storyteller was gone. Long before writing, stories became humanity's first library. Then there was art. Deep inside caves, beyond the reach of daylight, prehistoric artists covered the walls with remarkable images of horses, bison, deer, mammoths, and other animals. Working by the flickering light of animal fat lamps, they used charcoal and natural pigments to create paintings that still amaze us today. No one knows exactly why these works were created. They may have marked important ceremonies, honored successful hunts, taught younger generations, or simply expressed the imagination of the people who painted them. Whatever their purpose, they reveal something extraordinary. Even in a world where every day was a struggle for survival, humans still found time to create. The storm outside had slowed the pace of life. Inside the cave, however, progress continued. Tools became better. Knowledge grew deeper. Creativity flourished. By the time the rain finally began to fade, the people waiting inside were no longer simply survivors. They were inventors, teachers, artists, and storytellers, quietly shaping the future, while the world outside stood still. Eventually, every storm comes to an end. The clouds begin to separate. The endless sound of rain fades away, and the world outside the shelter starts to transform. For prehistoric humans, the end of the storm wasn't just a return to normal life. It was a moment of opportunity. The same rain that had made hunting impossible had also changed the landscape in ways that could help them survive. The ground was now soft and covered with information. Fresh animal footprints were preserved in the mud, showing hunters exactly which creatures had passed through, where they were going, and how recently they had been there. Instead of searching blindly, people could read the land like a map. Rain had left behind clues. It also restored resources that were essential for life. Streams began flowing again. Natural pools filled with fresh water. Plants that had been struggling during dry periods quickly returned with new growth. Roots became easier to dig from softened soil. Mushrooms appeared in damp areas, and insects emerged in large numbers, creating additional sources of food. The storm had not destroyed the environment. It had temporarily reshaped it. The people who understood these changes gained an enormous advantage. They knew that survival was not about defeating nature. It was about learning its patterns. Every season had a lesson. Every landscape had a message. Every challenge contained an opportunity. Over thousands of generations, humans became experts at adapting. They learned when animals migrated, when plants grew, where water could be found, and how weather affected every part of their lives. This ability to adjust may have been one of the greatest reasons our species survived. Strength alone was not enough. Speed alone was not enough. The humans who succeeded were those who could observe, learn, cooperate, and change when the world around them changed. Looking back, those endless rainy days were not simply periods of hardship. They were moments of preparation. While storms kept people away from the hunt, they gave them time to improve their tools, repair their clothing, teach younger generations, strengthen social bonds, and develop new ideas. The quiet hours beside the fire may have been just as important as the dramatic moments outside, chasing prey, because human progress was not created only during moments of action. It was also created during moments of waiting. When ancient humans sat together in shelters, they were not doing nothing. They were building the foundations of the future. They were creating technology. They were preserving knowledge. They were developing culture. They were becoming more human. So what did prehistoric people really do when it rained for days? They adapted. They protected what kept them alive. They created what would help them survive. They passed knowledge from one mind to another. And they transformed difficult moments into opportunities. The rain eventually stopped. The sun returned. But the lessons learned during those storms remained. They became part of the skills, traditions, and creativity that carried humanity forward. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson from our ancestors. Life will always bring unexpected storms. Times when progress seems impossible. Times when the path ahead disappears. But sometimes the moments that force us to slow down are the moments when we prepare ourselves the most. Ancient humans survived not because nature was always kind to them. They survived because they learned how to respond when it wasn't. The storms passed. The people endured. And through their ability to adapt, imagine, and create, humanity continued its journey.